Hey guys, today we are making strawberry mousse using fresh strawberries. I will also share how to make very simple strawberry sauce to go with it, which you can make in a minute. So let's get started. First, we are going to soak gelatin sheet in ice water. You can also use gelatin powder. Just follow the instruction in the package to see if you need to mix with cold water beforehand. About gelatin, there are some other really important tips that I want to talk a little bit more in details. So I'll share that at the end of this video so that this portion is not gonna be too long. And as preparation, I also recommend you to set all the glasses ready to go so that you can pour the mousse right after it's made when the condition is the best. Now we're gonna cut fresh strawberries and puree them. Today I'm making strawberry mousse and strawberry sauce, so I'm cutting strawberries for both of them so that I don't have to do it twice. If you do not have a food processor, you can also use a juicer. Just puree it until it looks very nice and smooth. And today we are straining it to remove seeds and create more smooth texture, but you do not need to strain if you want to leave seeds in your mousse. And from there, take the amount for the mousse. The rest is for the sauce. So set aside in the fridge so that we can use later. Heat up about 1/3 of the puree so that we can melt gelatin in it. I used a microwave today. Gelatin melts with temperature higher than 50 to 60 Celsius. No need to boil this puree, but make sure that it is warm enough, it is hot enough to melt gelatin. And make sure it is completely melted. If you do not melt it completely at this point, your mousse does not set enough later. So be sure to take a look closely and see if there are any pieces of gelatin left. Add about half of the rest of the puree and mix. And pour it back to the bowl and mix well. Now we add lemon juice. It might seem like a lot of lemon juice, but this acid really helps to bring out even more strawberry flavor. Okay, so this puree part is all done. Now we're gonna work on whipped cream. So with this recipe, we are going to whip heavy cream until it gets very, very fluffy. Once you over whip, you cannot really fix it completely. So I always stop the machine right before it's done and finish with the hand carefully. Okay, so whipped cream is done. We're gonna set this aside in the fridge until right before use. When you use soft whipped cream, you will need more gelatin to harden the mousse. By using stiff and fluffy whipped cream like today, you will need slightly less gelatin to set your mousse. That means you can create more fluffy and less jelly-like texture compared to the first example. Just make sure that you do not over whip the heavy cream until it gets separated. Now we are making Italian meringue. Add granulated sugar and water in the pot. Make sure that all the sugar is wet completely before heating. In the mixing bowl, add egg white. Make sure no yolks, oils, or liquids are mixed in the egg whites so that it'll whip up really well to create fluffy Italian meringue. Once it starts getting bubbly like shampoo, I add sugar and continue whipping until it gets very fluffy. Usually I start heating up my pot after adding sugar to the egg white since the amount of water and sugar is very small today and the syrup get cooked up really fast. Cook up to 119 to 120 Celsius and immediately remove from the heat. And slowly add syrup to the meringue from the side of your bowl like this. Before you add syrup, the meringue should get whipped up really well like this and look very fluffy. And once you feel it is slightly warm, lower the speed to medium-low speed and continue whipping until you don't feel the temperature when you touch them. As soon as that happens, stop whipping, take out your cold whipped cream from a fridge and mix them together. Once the meringue cools down, it'll be harder to let it blend nicely, so stop folding in as soon as it is done. You do not need to mix a lot, just mix very lightly like this. At this point, your puree should not be too cold or too warm. When you touch it, you shouldn't feel the temperature or you feel slightly cold. If the puree is too cold and kind of getting hardened because of the gelatin, simply warm it up just a tiny bit with the microwave or simmering water. Add about 1/3 of strawberry puree and fold with a whisk like this. Like fold and drop, fold and drop. You can also use spatula instead. Again, do not overmix here at all so that you do not kill too much air bubbles in meringue to make light and airy mousse. Now add half of the puree and mix just like how we did earlier. And add the rest of the puree and mix the same way. And in the very end, clean the bowl with a spatula, flip the bottom, and fold until everything is evenly blended. Stop as soon as you don't see a stroke of strawberry puree. And immediately pour in glasses or whatever you want to pour in. And chill for about a few hours or until it's set completely. Now let's make strawberry sauce. It is so easy. First, weigh how much puree you have left and pour that in the pot. Add sugar and lemon juice. And heat it up until it starts boiling gently. It is still a sauce even if you do not heat it up, but by heating up, you can keep the freshness slightly longer and also it'll get thickened just slightly more. You can pour the sauce on top before serving or serve it with the mousse so that your guests can pour by themselves. Today I poured beforehand and added more later as I ate it. The texture is so right and airy, and it tastes so strawberry. So for anyone who likes strawberry or mousse or fruit mousse, I highly recommend you to try this. So today I used 5 grams of gelatin seed, and you definitely can use gelatin powder instead. But if you are not using for like entremets or cakes, and if you are just pouring in glasses like today and eating with a spoon, one thing you can do is reducing the amount of gelatin just a tiny bit. Not too much, but like 4 gram or 4.5 gram, and that way your mousse is definitely gonna be less firmer and you might feel slightly more light and airy. So that's something you can try. But when you adjust the amount of gelatin like that, you want to pay attention to bloom in gelatin. But today I used this gelatin sheets and the bloom is 230. It says right here. So basically bloom is a strength of gelatin. When the bloom is higher, your mousse is gonna get firmer. When the bloom is lower, your mousse is gonna be softer. And usually the bloom ranges from like 50 to 300 or 350, and mine is, like I said, 230, so which is a little bit higher than average. So check your gelatin that you have and compare it with the bloom that I used today and see if it's about same or if it's overly different, and you can kind of guess if you need to use more gelatin or less gelatin. So that means even if you use 5 gram, if you use lower bloom gelatin, the texture is gonna be softer. But sometimes I think that some of the package does not say bloom, unfortunately. Even if you see the amount of bloom in your package, I totally understand that it is so difficult to guess if this is your first time making mousse or if this is your first time trying this recipe. So this is the advice that is just so boring, but my advice to you is just try one time, make one time, and decide if you should reduce or add more gelatin next time. So that's something I wanted to talk about it so that you will know what to expect, and when you pick your gelatin you can pay attention to that bloom. So today we added Italian meringue in the mousse. So when people say mousse, with my understanding, it is made with 3 components. I'll talk about fruit mousse specifically today, but first fruits puree, and second gelatin, and third whipped cream. So if you have 3 of this, people usually call it mousse, and sometimes some pastry chefs like to add meringue to that. So fruits puree, gelatin, whipped cream, and meringue. And a lot of pastry chefs like to use Italian meringue, but I gotta say sometimes people like to use French meringue and Swiss meringue as well. And let's talk about salmonella or some other bacteria. So Italian meringue is made with adding really hot syrup, but it does not kill salmonella or some other bacteria. It's just not hot enough to kill those things. So to resolve this issue, I have 2 choices for you to pick from. Okay, so first choice is to pick pasteurized egg white or pasteurized egg, which is already heated enough to kill salmonella or some other bacteria. And most of the time you can find them at the local grocery stores, but in case you cannot find them, I have a second option, which is to use Swiss meringue and heat up to 71 Celsius, which is the temperature to kill salmonella. But I gotta say that compared to Italian meringue, Swiss meringue has less volume, and all the air bubbles are smaller. So because of that, it's a little bit heavier. That means when you use Swiss meringue, your mousse is gonna be slightly heavier. It's not as light and airy as the one with Italian meringue. But I've got to say the difference is really minor. If you cannot get pasteurized egg white, using Swiss meringue is something that you might want to try, and you can use the same amount of egg white and sugar from this recipe but discard water. So use 50 grams of egg white and 90 grams of granulated sugar, and make sure to heat it up to 71 Celsius. And if you want to learn about Italian meringue and Swiss meringue more in details, watch those videos. I'm explaining about them even deeper so that you can have a better understanding. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was helpful for you. If it was, please give me a like and give me a feedback and share it with your baking friend. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.